All right, so for my history classes, folks, look, this is February, and February for us is officially Black History Month. Number one, I wanted to offer you a special assignment. Before I need to do that, I need to acknowledge that what you hear is Lift Every Voice and Sing, being sung by the Amana AME Zion Church Choir in the background, and it's what is commonly become known as the Black National Anthem. It's actually a song that dates all the way back to a poem written during the Harlem Renaissance. I felt that was appropriate music for what I'm going to offer in the way of an assignment. Look, it is Black History Month. If you know anything, that means that that term probably comes from the late 70s, early 80s, because we are referring to people who are African Americans as black. Look, it's important that we celebrate Black history, that we celebrate African American history. I have some people say, well, why does it have to have its own month? And I would wonder about that too. Why can't we discuss, when we discuss all history? But the fact is we need to focus on it. We need to talk more about it. And as such, I'm going to offer you the opportunity for a special assignment. And the assignment, it's an extra credit assignment. It's worth 100 points. It can go ahead and replace any other assignment that is not your term paper, that is not a midterm, that is not a final. So it can be a 100-point block to replace any one of those. And here's the way the assignment works. Rather than writing a paper, look, I'm tired of people writing papers. What I want you to do is put together a quick video presentation, just like I'm doing right here, right now. I'm speaking off the cuff, so if I stumble, I apologize, but you'll get over it. What I want you to do is introduce a person from the African American community, introduce an icon, introduce somebody of influence. Now, please, I respect Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. By all means, but every third grader in America is writing a paper about him. So I'm going to ask you to dig a little bit deeper. I'm going to ask you to look around a little bit more. I'm going to ask you to pay attention. Look beyond just the news, look beyond just sports, but look around your community, look around and see who's there. And as such, I wanted to give you an idea. What I want is a presentation no more than about 5 minutes, and so I've decided to give you a sample. Some of you are aware of this hat. You have seen it before, either in my office or you've seen it here in my classroom at Caldwell Community College. I was talking to a class about this the other day, and I said, what does this mean to you? And one of my students said, that's a church lady hat. And I said, yes, it is indeed a church lady hat. But more than that, it is a church matriarch hat. In the church that I go to, there is a group of ladies that are elderly, that are the icons of the matriarchs of the church. Now, my church, the hat is red. And I call them the red hat ladies. And what I know, and some of the men are still figuring out, is they actually run the church. The deacons, the pastor think they run it, but these are the ladies who are that center of what goes on. And I value them greatly. This particular hat comes from a student project, and if you head over to E314, you'll see in the corner that I have a series of student projects that are still there that I keep to remind me. This one reminds me of a particular student, but also an icon of the community. This hat reminds me of Miss Sylvia Greene. And she's important because she empowered me. She empowered me because a couple of years ago, I was lucky enough to teach the African American history course. And one of the things is there was a debate about whether I was the person to teach it. Part of the debate was obviously that I am not a person of color, and in spite of the fact that that was argued, that I was able to step up, that people agreed that, look, it's a history course, and that we could tap into the community, that we could bring the people in, and they could take part. And so, I tried to speak to different people in the community. What would you like to see? What should be added? What should we be discussed? And one of the things that occurred was Tammy Green, many of you know her, and she'll probably get after me for mentioning here, was nice enough to introduce me to her mother, Miss Sylvia. And Miss Sylvia, at this point, I believe, if I remember correctly, is 85 years old, and she is a matriarch of the community. And she was kind enough not to just consent to talk to me, but to actually decide to come in and attend my class that first semester. And it's interesting because if you don't know Miss Sylvia, number one, you can look her up on the internet. She is an outstanding member of the Freedman community in Lenore, North Carolina. That she is a representative of the artist community. That she is an artist of found items. That she has collected many items around her neighborhood that people would discard. And what she has done is gone through and created art and reconstructed them in such a way that it's a decoration, it's embellishment of the community there. But she doesn't just stop at that. She is also a member of influence in her church. She is one of the ladies that indeed would be wearing this hat, who is a quiet but ardent supporter of the faith and of the people and of the movement, both of the religious and the faith movement, but also of the movement of civil rights in the area. That she was one of the students of the original Freedman High School. And if you don't know about Freedman, Freedman is an area that is African American that goes all the way back to the post-civil rights area to Reconstruction, when freedmen basically was a descriptive term and not just a neighborhood. And Freedman High School was the African American high school back when it was segregated. She attended that high school, and when things were desegregated and the high school disappeared and destroyed, was replaced by public housing, she made sure to stand up and say, well, look, we need to remember this. Well, look, she represents many people in a variety of areas. She is, to me, a driving force. What brings to mind each time is she sat in, even though it was a challenge to be there, she sat in and she empowered me in such a way. I remember the first day of the course, it was quite a mixed bag of people that were there. And I thought, okay, well, how do I approach this? Because for many, it's a minefield. My students laughed, and I'm not one to be in a minefield because I'm more of a bulldozer. And I thought, okay, well, how do I approach this? And students were young, and they were cutting up and everything. And until Miss Sylvia walked in the door. She walked in the door and everything stopped. These young men, these young women, regardless of gender, regardless of age, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of color, instantly stopped because somebody's grandma had walked in the door. And they were all suddenly quiet, respectful young men and young women. I remember one of my young men jumping up and assisting her down the aisle, so because there were so many desks, and making sure to pull her desk chair out. And I remember thinking, oh, I know how this works. And I said, I know this dynamic. And that alone empowered me to just kind of jump into the course and realize that maybe it was more about telling history and telling about what was alike rather than just what was different. But she empowered me in such a way that this hat and the power that, because I know what it stands for, makes her stick in my mind as a important member and representative, not just of her community, but of a wide range of communities. And so she's my icon that I want to talk about with this. And so I want to thank her for the opportunity to discuss her, to thank her daughter and her great-granddaughter, who is probably going to chuckle that I mentioned her in this as well. So the assignment here is going to be to introduce a person. Whether you use something to help us understand that or not, that part will be up to you. And I'll go ahead and add further instructions. Well, that will be it for now. Thank you.